We're pleased to welcome now Brad White, Executive Director of the Mississippi Department of Transportation. Brad, good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we got out of the gate here with a lot of a flurry, I think is one way to put it, down there at the Capitol. The House wasted no time. The Speaker of the House and Ways and Means Committee Chairman Trey Lamar in introducing sweeping tax legislation that would certainly affect your world at Department of Transportation, but it includes ending the exemption of motor fuels from sales taxes and would impose a 5% sales tax on the retail sale of fuel, all of which would be earmarked for the Department of Transportation. Before you just offer your thoughts on that, you've been outspoken, you and the transportation commissioners, about needs you have from a funding perspective, and I think you've shared, I've seen you do it in presentations to groups and certainly on this program, that we're perhaps not tapping the full amount of federal funding we could, simply because of the lack of some state funding. Explain that to the folks.
Not just not tapping the potential, but you're also putting what federal dollars we have at risk.
Okay.
Because we run a federal program on behalf of the Federal Highway Administration here within Mississippi, and the federal government is very interested in the maintenance or the upkeep of the taxpayers' current investment more so than new construction. We have performance targets that we have to hit. Every year, Federal Highway Administration with our group inspects all of the interstate lane miles within the state, and every other year they do the rest of the highway systems, looking at the pavement conditions, and from that is where we develop the plan of what projects need to be let when in order to rehabilitate and maintain the system we have. What we've seen in the past is with a flat budget, we've had the same amount of money going into that paving program, but less projects being awarded because the money's not going as far. Everything, costs have just gone up. So you're falling behind on those performance targets. And it's only a matter of time that you fall behind enough that the Federal Highway Administration says, okay, you're about to get to a level to where we're going to have to pull your federal funds if the state doesn't come up with some type of plan to remedy this problem. And this has happened to us before with local bridges back in 2017. So we've been talking to the legislature about what our shortfall was and being able to show them with math of what the shortfall is and what it would take for us to begin responding to these performance targets in a positive way. This is the first bill since I've been director, but I'm willing to say it's the first bill since 1987 that has the significant amount of money that both the state aid road system at the county level as well as the state highway system and interstate system that we have to deal with. This is the first bill I've seen that generates this kind of revenue for us. Now, that's up to all the policymakers as to what those things need to look like, and moving our state into a consumer-based tax model certainly is something that will be discussed. But we're very excited about just having an opportunity to finally have a conversation that's meaningful and that's substantive and that has real numbers in it that will allow us to do what the taxpayers expect from us.
Okay. So you know what the plan calls for is this 5% sales tax levied on fuel. It is thought to generate about $400 million annually.
Based on current numbers.
Yeah. And then, of course, the change would also be made based on the bill to the way the Mississippi Lottery Corporation annual proceeds are distributed. And currently the first $80 million generated annually is earmarked for the State Highway Fund. That's been in place since the lottery was implemented back in November of 2019. And we've hit that $80 million threshold every year that's been transferred. Of course, that is honestly a small part of your total annual budget.
Our
which
over budget's about 1.4.
1.4. Okay, I said 1.2 in the last segment. So
$80 million, while it's very helpful, I mean, it is a small portion. And the lottery was set to sunset. I mean, we weren't guaranteed to continue receiving
first 10 years
beyond 28. So that being part of the discussion doesn't bother me at all. In fact, this bill allows for something that we've never had, and that it establishes the potential for recurring revenue into the other modes of transportation outside of highways and bridges, which we've never had. Session before last, the legislature gave us $30 million to invest in those modes. With that, we were able to leverage 120-something million in federal funds.
Yeah.
So that's a 4-to-1 return on investment. So having money to put into rail and airports and the waterways around, I think is meaningful as well.
Yeah. So Brad, I know you've heard this before. To those who say, well, the Department of Transportation doesn't need any more money, it just needs to tighten up and operate more efficiently and eliminate waste and so-called unnecessary spending. What do you say to that?
Well, I just tell them to look at we've been audited over and over again. We've had performances audits put on us. We have looked at our efficiency measures. We're always looking for ways to improve the way that we do business. Last year, we broke a record by awarding over $1.2 billion in highway and bridge contracts. That's the most the department's ever been. Again, we're running a budget of about $1.4 billion. I think that we're making the dollars go just as far as what we can. Like I said, the money just doesn't go as far. So you are seeing, while the same amount of money is going into these paving projects, you're seeing less of those paving projects, which means we continue to fall behind on these performance targets. So that's the reason we've been trying to sound the alarm that it's time now that we not be reactionary but proactive in addressing that modernization that's needed of MDOT's funding model.
Okay. And we've also experienced a significant economic growth. I mean, it's underway, but some major announcements in the state of Mississippi over the last couple of years of investment in new projects. Generally speaking, these projects need good roads and bridges.
Oh, yeah. Like Senator Lott used to say, if they can't get here, they're not coming. I mean, these businesses, they care about being able to get their employees in and out of their facilities. They want to be able to get their goods in and out of the facilities. And that all runs on transportation. You've heard me say before, not to try to sound too cliche-ish, but we can talk about investing in public education, which I'm for. All three of my sisters are in the public education system, but it doesn't matter how good our schools are if the buses cease to be able to cross the bridges to carry the kids to the school. It doesn't matter how good your health care is if the ambulance gets stuck on 55 on the way to the hospital. And that's the situation we're in. Due to this funding issue, about 12 years ago, the commission had to basically put the capacity new construction program on the shelf in order to divert all funds toward maintenance. And so you had a situation where our program that's designed to keep the system ahead of traffic projections so that we don't have these traffic congestion problems was done away with. And as a result, you've got the situations we have in DeSoto County or in Madison County or along the course and through the Jackson area. So seeing us go backwards at the cost of losing the capacity program and falling behind on maintenance is just not a path that we can take. And I'm just glad that we're finally going to have a real conversation about what that could look like.
Do you have any thoughts about whether or not, and this may be a little bit more asking for your political opinion, but do you have any thoughts about whether or not a sales tax makes sense over increasing the excise tax? Is that
Well,
do you have any insight into why they selected that approach?
Well, traditionally, we've always funded our transportation system from some type of user-based model. You're going to pay more taxes to contribute to the transportation system the more you drive your vehicle, or the more that's worked. So traditionally, that's where we've always looked at. So I think it makes sense that that's where they were looking at here upon the elimination of the income tax. Other states do it differently. We've talked about the opportunity for a more diversified approach in doing it. We've talked about opportunities to try to simply just live within the existing budget we have and devoting more funds into transportation. What this bill does, though, is it has a couple of different things. That you're trying to remove the tax on work, which we've never been involved in that conversation before because that's not our responsibility at MDOT. But if that's an overarching goal, I believe that the policymakers in the House, both Speaker White and Chairman Lamar, know that you can't eliminate that stream of revenue without taking care of your core functions of government, or you're just going to create an even bigger disaster down the road eventually. So I think that that's why this bill has two big components, both the elimination of tax on work and making sure that we're going to provide for the core functions of government in the process.
Gotcha. Well, they're certainly pushing it hard over there in the House. We'll see what happens in the Senate. If you can hang around, you can give us an update on some of the projects you got going on around the state and what the future plans are for the agency.
Yeah, happy to.
We got Executive Director of the Mississippi Department of Transportation, Brad White, in the Element Wealth studio. We're coming right back. Studio, and we're visiting with Executive Director of the Mississippi Department of Transportation, Brad White. So, we appreciate it, Mr. Executive Director, you weighing in on this proposal to reform taxes in the state of Mississippi, which would, of course, include a substantial boost to the revenue to your agency, the Department of Transportation. $1.4 billion, the annual budget,
Correctly.
right?
Correct.
Okay. And what's the breakdown on that, Brad, with respect to excise tax on fuel in Mississippi, federal, and then other fees and so forth?
The vast majority of all of that is fuel tax, whether it's federally collected or the state collected.
Okay.
A little more than half of our budget is federal dollars, and we utilize the state fuel tax to put up and spend in order to draw down the federal money.
Right.
So that's the reason our state funds are so serious, because without proper state funding, you can't access the federal dollars that you're drawing down. But it's the vast majority of our budget now. We receive the $80 million from lottery. There's a few million we get from the fees on hybrid and electric vehicles. There's some contractors' taxes and other things we get, but in comparison to the overall budget, it's very minimal with regard to the fuel tax.
Yeah. Got it. So let's talk about what you guys are working on in the state. I know a lot of folks are always interested in when's DOT coming to my neighborhood to help out.
Well, a few years ago, when the Federal Highway Administration was reauthorized by Congress, they'd do that every 5 years. Senator Wicker was the lead Republican on the Transportation Committee that wrote that language. And we were able to get authorization for an extra $1 billion in Mississippi over the current 5-year period that we're within. So with that extra revenue, the commissioners were able to restart the capacity program, which is our program for new construction. It's basically, as you know, we run two big programs. One is the maintenance program that's designed to take care of the existing system, and one is the capacity construction program that's designed to add efficiency to our system and keep us ahead of traffic if possible. And that program, due to lack of funds, had been laid dormant for over a decade. So the new funds allowed us to restart this program and begin bringing projects to construction readiness, and that's when the legislature about 3 years ago stepped in and really helped by providing the one-time funds necessary to go on, award the project, and then build it once we brought it to construction readiness. And we have projects now under construction that over $1 billion worth of new construction projects around the state, and they're from Highway 15 in Tippah County, Union County, Pontotoc County. We're getting ready to award a project on I-55 in DeSoto County, Highway 7 in Lafayette County. Moving on down, you've got Highway 19 in Neshoba County, Highway 82 over in Washington County, projects on I-10 throughout the Gulf Coast, Highway 57 over in Jackson County. So we've got over $1 billion worth of these new construction projects going on currently around the state, and we're looking to award some more from another project over in Neshoba County, finishing out the four-laning of, I believe that's Highway 19, Flowers Interchange on I-20 to help with some capacity issues over there near Warren County. But also Highway 25 out from Grants Ferry out to 471 in Rankin County, and Highway 55 here at Gluckstadt and Madison that will hopefully in the next year award that'll be widening the interstate and building the approaches to an interchange there. And then it goes all the way down to Highway I-59 in Forest and Lamar County, and trying to help develop around some of the economic development sites there.
Bunch of needs.
So very much so. When you look back 20 years ago, the legislature passed what's called the Vision 21 law, and that was designed to take the politics out of these big construction programs, because of the 87 four-lane program, for all the good it did, the politicians decided where to build four-lane highways, and we found that that's not the best model. So Vision 21 requires that it be a data-followed process, and the commission has to spread on their minutes the reasoning and justification behind the project, and it has to show that you're improving a roadway that's no longer able to adequately, or is expected not to be able to adequately handle the volume of traffic coming. So the system works, but when you look at the identified needs, that list alone is over $9 billion of construction needs, which include things like the whole reworking of I-20 from Highway 61 back to the Mississippi River, which is $1 billion project of its own right now if we were to try to do that. So that's the other thing that's so important about the dialogue that the House of Representatives is starting with this House Bill 1, is you finally have a dedicated, reliable, recurring revenue stream that can step in and save our maintenance program so that by saving it, we're able to continue the capacity new construction program and continue to try to improve the efficiency of the system. So we're very excited about the opportunity of seeing that go through the legislative process.
Yeah. Well, I know as well that there's a lot of stuff going on in my home county in Madison. I'll just use that as an example because of this big AWS project. You're aware that the state is loaning money to the county, and you guys may have some involvement in that as well, I'm thinking. But
ours is just around the I-55 and the new interchange is going to be cover the bridge that they're building with regard to the local project that across 55.
I got you.
What we will do is come in and add the lanes, widening the interstate, and then as soon as the interstate's widen, we'll add the approaches to that overpass, creating an interchange there that'll help alleviate some traffic off of the other routes around there.
I will say that back in December, I traveled all the way up to the corner to Tishomingo County, and I will tell you, I was impressed. It's been about 10 years since I've been through that area with just the improvements around Tupelo and all the way up to the corner of the state.
Right.
Very impressive. And so a lot of work's been done.
I do think that like I said, I think we do a very good job of making sure that we get as much of the dollars that we're given as possible to the projects that the taxpayers expect to be seen. Every year we provide a plan to the legislature, and it shows where every penny is obligated in a project by county.
Okay.
It shows the termini and everything. So we have tried to improve our transparency with the legislature to say, look, if you want to know where we're spending the money, this is where it is, and it follows some data-driven processes that kind of removes the politics out of it, which is another aspect that I like.
Well, and clarify that, if you would, Brad, for our audience. Who makes these decisions on, what projects get prioritized and where the money goes?
Well, two different things. Our maintenance program is devised from the data that's collected from Federal Highway and our own research people when they go out and survey all of the pavement around the state. Like I said, every year the interstates are looked at. Every other year the rest of the state is looked at. And that pavement condition goes into a document, and it's from that our engineers and professionals are able to say, all right, this is the one that we need to work on first, and then this one, and then this one. And that priority list is set out, and the commission is bound to follow that. Through that, particularly if you're going to use any of the federal dollars in it, it has to follow that rhyme and reason that's backed up by the data of the pavement condition. The problem we've run into is the same amount of money that's going into that's not going as far, so you're starting to fall behind in those performance targets of that. As far as the new construction projects, that's the discretion of the elected commission. And primarily it's because that list of needs is so large and the revenue going to it is relatively small. You've got, like I said, a $9 billion list of needs and $120 million that we're putting into it every year to try to cash flow those projects outside of the ones the legislature have just fronted the money to build completely. Yeah. So they're able to pick from that list to try to move what projects they deem most important to the forefront, so that it's the people's elected commission that determine that with a capacity project. So do they do that together as a commission? Because I'm assuming that each commissioner brings forth all the projects in their district. By law, they can only speak through their minutes. So they have to work as a team, as a unit. And that takes a lot of the politics out of it, too, to be sure one end of the state's not preferred over the other. And I think the commission we have now does as good a job of any commission I've been around at working together to try to tackle the needs in their state. So but those projects and that they pick also are part of that 3-year plan that goes in front of the legislature every year. To what extent does the public have any influence or voice on what those needs should be and how they should be prioritized? Well, they have direct access to their elected commission, quite often. Our commissioners all the time are interfacing with the public, whether that be the local elected officials or whether that be civic clubs or other entities that would put them in the face of interested people. But also a lot of our work, the federal government requires there to be certain types of public hearings and input from the public and other things like that, even when a identified need has been placed, when we're looking at what that route should look like or how should it take shape. We're required by our federal regulations to gain input from the public even through that process. So they're very much a part, to the degree that they want to be, a part of what we do.
I got you. And would you suggest to the public, if they wanted to perhaps have a voice and just provide some suggestions, they should reach out to their commissioner?
Absolutely, and many do. I mean,
Okay.
my first job in government was as assistant to Commissioner Dick Hall when he first became Transportation Commissioner, and that's what I did every day, was to take the calls of people that said, hey, there's a need here, or we've got a problem here, and making sure that those got in front of the commissioner and ultimately in front of the commission.
My experience is all three are responsive.
Very responsive.
Is the way that goes. Brad White, Executive Director, Mississippi Department of Transportation, thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.